I know you've watched a whole lot of videos on how to make a male native shirt, and yet you still find it difficult to make one perfectly. In this video series, I will be showing you secrets and tips on how to draft a male native shirt pattern to detailing. Also, you will learn the proper and correct way of attaching a shirt sleeve with curve. Wait, did I also mention you will be learning how to finish the neckline area neatly with back yoke and collar? Of course you will. And not forgetting how to attach the front pocket and the placket. My name is Bolaji and this is Reggie School of Fashion. In drafting a male shirt pattern, the following measurements are needed. The first one is the neck circumference. The neck circumference measurement is needed when drafting a male shirt pattern. It is very important. It is very important for you to take the measurement of the neck around the base of the neck. The back measurement, that is the shoulder point to shoulder point. The chest measurement, that is the chest circumference, which is a bust circumference for female pattern. The armhole circumference, the neck width, that is the neck opening, the neck depth for the front and back, the waist length, the hip circumference, the hip level, and the shirt length. So the first step is to draw a borderline at the top of the pattern paper. So I will label this line as the starting point, and I will be making use of this side of the pattern paper as the center front. So I will label this side as center front. So this is my center front, all right? So that means all measurements I will be taking will start from this side. So that is the meaning of center front. So this is the center of my front pattern. So I will start by taking the neckline width, that is the opening of the neckline, and I'll be making use of 3 inches. The 3 inches is standard for all men sizes, apart from children. So if we are sewing for children, that is when you can reduce the measurement. But for adults, the 3 inches is standard. Then I will take the neckline depth. The neckline depth measurement is taken downward. You measure it downward. The width, you measure it horizontally. Then the depth is vertical. So for the depth, I will be making use of 2.5 inches. So this measurement is not standard. It is not constant. So I can tamper with it after constructing the back and the front neckline. I will measure the two and make sure I have the neck circumference measurement I'm using, which is 16 inches. So if it is not up to, I can add to it, and if it is more, I can reduce it. Initially, I'm supposed to use 3 inches, but I reduced this measurement because the back is still going to add to the measurement of the front. When we get to that point, you will understand perfectly. So I'm drawing a line which I will be using to construct the neckline. So from here to here is 2.5. Don't get confused. From this point to this point is also 2.5. From the center front to this point is 3 inches. From the center front to this point is 3 inches. So I'm taking that measurement again to confirm. So that's 3 inches point. Then I'll connect the 2 points together to make it a straight line. So after drawing out this line, then I'll get the angle 90 of this point, and I'll be making use of my pattern master to achieve that. So after getting that point, then I'll draw a straight line upward. So then from the center front, I'll come in by 1 inch. The reason for measuring that 1 inch inward is to avoid the center of the neckline being pointed. So I'll measure 1 inch inward. So that is the 1 inch. So I can get the angle 90 on my pattern paper because I have that same shape on my pattern master. As you can see, this is the shape. So this helps me to get the angle 90 of this area. After drawing out this line, then I'll connect my neckline using the armhole curve ruler. So I'm connecting from this 1 inch point towards the starting point. So that is the front neckline. So this is the front neckline. After constructing the neckline, then I will take the measurement of the shoulder. That is the back, shoulder point to shoulder point. So the shoulder point to shoulder point I'm using is 18. Half of that is 9 inches. So the back measurement is always divided by 2 because it is the half of the body. So back to shoulder, which is the back measurement, is divided by 2. Half of that I have 9 inches. So after getting this point, then I will measure the depth of the armhole. That is the armhole depth. Then how can I discover the armhole depth? So the armhole depth is getting by dividing the armhole circumference measurement by 2. So the armhole circumference measurement you took, you divided by 2. Half of that is the armhole depth. So that is the distance you have from the starting point to where the armhole stops. So where the armhole stops is the chest level. So in this tutorial, I'm using 9.5 as the armhole depth, which means the armhole circumference measurement I took is 19. So I'm taking the same measurement at the center front area. So this will help me to have a perfect straight line. So this is the chest level for this pattern. So I've labeled this line as the real chest level. So this is the real chest level of the measurement I'm using. Now I'm going to come up by 2 inches. Why 2 inches? Please, you have to pay attention to this because if you get this area wrong, you might not get the desired result for your pattern and the construction will go wrong. This area is very important. I'm coming up by 2 inches. Why do I have to come up by 2 inches? The reason is the back pattern is usually longer than the front pattern. The front pattern will be 4 inches longer than the front pattern. The back pattern will be 4 inches longer than the front pattern. This 4 inches, it is a standard measurement. Then why do I have to come up by 2 inches? The front pattern will share 2 inches out of this 4. the front will take 2 inches out of this 4. So which means if I make use of this real chest measurement after constructing the shirt and I took 2 inches from the back to the front, this will be longer. It's going to move away from the real chest level. So that is why I'm bringing it up by 2 inches. So from the real chest level, I will measure 2 inches upward. So if I'm using 3 inches, so it's going to be half of 3, that is 1.5. I'll bring it up by 1.5. So I'm bringing it up by 2 inches. So which means I'm adding 4 inches to the back pattern. I'm adding 4 inches to the back pattern. And one of the reasons we are doing this is we are trying to move the center of the shoulder. So that is the joining point away from the center of the shoulder of the wearer. Because men's stature is different from that of female. You know, the back of the male is very wide. Their back is usually wider than the chest. And there's muscle at the back. So if we don't move the center of the shoulder away from the center of their shoulder, the seam will rip off. So the idea of making the back longer than the front is what I'm telling you. It's just purposely to move the center of the shoulder. The seam should not fall exactly at the center of the shoulder. If the seam falls at the center of the shoulder, the seam will rip off because of the muscle they have at the back. So that is the main reason for doing that. So hope that will help you in constructing the shirt pattern. So I will label this as a temporary chest level. After constructing the shirt, putting everything together, the measurement is coming back to this. So that is why I label this as a real chest level. Please don't get confused. So this is the real chest level. So these 2 inches is the temporary chest level. We are still taking it back from the back pattern. So after this step, the next step is to construct the armhole. Don't forget, I took half of the back measurement from the center front to this point. So this measurement, I will insert it on the temporary chest level. Which is 9.5. And I will connect the 2 points together. So after connecting this point together, this line is the armhole line. So that is the armhole line. So on this line, from the border line, I will measure 1 inch downward. This 1 inch is constant and it works for all men figure. It works for, it even works for female, both male and female. The 1 inch works perfectly for male and female. But as for me, when I'm drafting this, because of the way the men's shoulder is slopey, is quite different from that of the female. So I don't make use of this 1 inch. So I prefer using 1.5 inches. So this will give me a really slopey shoulder and it will make the shirt fit very well on the body. So I will measure 1.5. I will not use 1 inch. So this is the shoulder line. So the shoulder line is not meant to be straight, it's meant to be slopey. So just the way the shape of our body is. So I'll label this as the shoulder line. So the 1.5 I took from here, from the starting point to this point, I will return it back to the chest level. So the 1.5 I use in constructing the shoulder line. So I'm returning it back. I'm bringing it down by 1.5. So I will label this as the armhole. Please don't get confused. This is the temporary chest level. This is the real chest level. And this is what I'm using to construct the armhole. So I will label it as armhole. The reason why I'm doing this is because this pattern is a fitted shirt. It is a native shirt, right? But it's going to be a fitted one that looks like corporate shirt. The next step is to construct the armhole. In constructing the armhole, I'm going to measure what I have left from this 1.5 inches point to the armhole line. So that is the line I'm using as my armhole. So I have 7.5. So this is the midpoint. From this point to this point to the real armhole line, the armhole line I'm using, the line I'm using to construct my armhole. And from the 1.5 inches which I measured to draw out the shoulder slope, what I have in between is 7.5. So half of that is this point. Then I will take my ruler and extend that point inward. So the line is going towards the center front. Then on that line, I will measure 1 inch. I measured 1 inch inward. So this 1 inch, it's okay for all men. It works for all men because the armhole has to be free as much as possible. So after measuring out this 1 inch, which is this point, I will come to this line. Please don't get confused. We are not using this. We are not using this. So this is the line I'm using, where I wrote armhole line. So that is what I'm using as my armhole. So this is where I'm constructing my armhole. So on this line, I will insert the chest circumference measurement. So that circumference measurement replace the bust circumference for female. You know, when you are drafting for female, you make use of the bust. So but for male, instead of bust, we use the chest. So the chest circumference measurement I'm using, I will divide it by 4. So whatever I have is what I will insert on this line. So the quarter of the chest circumference measurement I'm using is 9.5, which means the chest circumference is 38. So that 9.5 falls exactly on this line. It falls on the armhole line. So when you take your measurement and it falls on the armhole line, there is no cause for alarm. You don't need to disturb yourself. It is normal because the way God created men, they have, I said it earlier, their back is usually wide. So, and in some cases, the back measurement and the chest circumference measurement almost the same. So when you divide half of the back and quarter of the chest, it's usually the same. And if anyone will not be the same, the difference will not be more than 0.25. At most, the highest you can say is 0.5. Is either you have the same as the back, or it is 0.25 more or 0.5. And none of these 3 measurements is enough to construct the armhole. So if you use this exact measurements, it will be very tight. There will not even be room to put it on. It will be very tight. So what you do is you add extra ease on that line. On that line, you add extra ease. So from this point, I will add 2.5 inches. I will add 2.5 inches. So this pattern I'm drafting is for average stature. The stature is average. So for average stature, I mean the medium. So 2.5 is okay. For small figure, 2 inches. For large figure, 3 inches. So 3 inches is okay for large figure. So the difference is between 2 and 3. 2 inches, you can use 2.25 as well. 2.25, 3. The chest area of the men, we don't really need it coming out like that of the female. So even though it's wide, it's even better is wide than it being tight. But at the same time, if you can go through and work with this value, you will have a perfect measurement, not too tight and not too wide. So I'm making use of 2.5. I'm making use of 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches from the armhole point. So that's 2.5 inches. I'm not using this. I'm not using any of this. Don't get stuff. So this is what I'm using. This is what I will use to construct the armhole. Then I will take my armhole curve ruler. So this is my armhole ruler. So I'm connecting from this 1.5 point. This is point 1. This 1 inch point is point 2. And this 2.5 is I added is point 3. When you are drafting pattern for long sleeve shirts, which means the shirt that will have a long sleeve, you have to work perfectly, as in you have to take note of enough ease around the armhole. It's very important, please. It's very, very important. So I'm connecting the 3 points together. This is point 1, this is point 2, and this is point 3. So this is the shape of the ruler. It has L shape. So this area I'm using is, I'm telling you that this is the front. I'm saying this is the front and this is the back, so that you understand. So the back, the side I call the back, is facing towards the center front. The back is facing towards the center front. That is the positioning. So if you cannot connect the 3 points together, you can connect the 2 points together first, then the remaining 2 points together. This and this together first, and this together later. And you have to take note of this as well, that your armhole is not C shape. The shape is not C, it is L. So when you are constructing your armhole, this is the shape you are expected to have and not C. You understand? So which means from this point to this point, you don't have much curve. You don't need much curve around this area. So you need curve from here to here. So I'm connecting these 2 points together now, and I will take note of the number I used on my armhole curve ruler, so that when I'm drafting the back pattern, I will make use of the same number, so that the armhole will be accurate. They will not be different. The shape will not be different from each other. So I'm taking note of that number. So that is why you have numbers on your rulers. So the numbers is for you to take note, so that when you are drafting two sides, you have the two as the same. Understand? So that is the first point. So I'm taking this from here to here. So the way I'm connecting is going to be a smooth connection, in such a way it will not be obvious I connected the armhole twice. You understand? So you have to take your connection not exactly from this point, let it come up a little. If your armhole doesn't get to this point, to this row point, that doesn't matter. So that is not an issue. Just make sure your armhole is smooth, very smooth, as much as possible. Can you see that? So this is the front armhole. When you are drafting a male shirt pattern, so this is the area you really have much to do. That is the upper part, from the shoulder to the chest level. You have to pay attention to it. You have to pay attention and be calm when you are doing it. Don't rush when you are drafting that area. So I'm inserting the remaining vertical measurements, which are the waist measurement and the hip measurement. So the waist length I'm using is 21. So from that 21, I will subtract 2 inches. Don't forget, I told you we are taking away 2 inches from the front because we are adding it to the back. but after putting the shirt together, the 2 inches will come back and join the front. So the remaining vertical measurements I'm having, I will subtract 2 inches from all of them, including the shirt length. So instead of 21 for the waist length, I will measure 19 inches. So that is 2 minus 21 is 19. For the hip level as well, I will subtract 2 inches. So, but I will prefer taking my measurement because the measurement I took is waist to hip. So whatever I have from waist to hip is what I will take from waist to hip. I will not subtract, or better still, for you not to get confused, my waist to hip is 7.5 and the waist length is 21. So which means 21 plus 7.5 is 28.5. So instead of taking this 28.5, I will subtract 2 inches, then I will have 26.5 left. Hope that is clear. So 26.5 is the hip level. So this is the waist level and this is the hip level. Then I will measure out the shirt length. The shirt length is different from the hip level because it is a male pattern. If it is female, we can use the hip as the length, you understand, but because it is a male, it still has to come down below the hip. So I will have the shirt level separate, which I'm using 34. I'm taking 2 inches away from that. I have 32 left. So then I'll make all these points a straight line. I've labeled my vertical measurement. So this is the waist level, this is the hip level, this is the shirt length, and this is the hem allowance. All these measurements are taken from the starting point downwards to the hem line. So the next step is to insert the horizontal measurements. So these are the measurements taken in circumference. So I have the waist level, I have the hip level, and I have the shirt length. But for this, I will be only inserting the hip circumference measurement. I will not make use of the waist circumference measurement, and the reason is the shape of men is different from that of female. You understand? The male stature is different from the female stature. This is because men usually has a narrow waist. For example, the waist circumference of the wearer of this is 32 inches. 32 inches. So if I insert the quarter of 32 inches, that is 8 inches, it's going to be somewhere around here. And the stomach is bigger than the waist. That is how God creates men. So their stomach, the measurement of their stomach is always usually bigger than the waist measurement. And the stomach is in between the chest and the waist. So the chest, the stomach is somewhere around here. So if I insert this measurement, after constructing the shirt, the stomach area will tight. It will be very tight. And I don't want to insert the stomach measurements. I don't want to use the measurement because I want this shirt to be fitted and curvy around the waist area. Though men are not that curvy, but at the same time, their side is not on a straight line. But in a case where you want to make a free shirt called buba, you understand, you want to make a buba, you don't need all this measurement. You don't need to insert any measurement here. You don't need to insert any measurement on the hip level. You don't even need to insert the waist level. You only need to insert the hip level and the shirt length. Then wherever you have from your armhole line, you bring it downward with a straight roller. It goes straight down. But because this is a fitted shirt, though it is a native shirt, but it's a fitted one, so I need this waist level. I need to insert my hip measurement. I will not use this measurement so that the remaining parts of the shirt will not be as wide as the armhole. So in this case, what I will do is insert my hip measurement and take away 1 or 0.5 inches away from that and insert it on the waistline. So by the time I connect the point together, there will be ease and room for the stomach to stay in the shirt comfortably. So that is what I do and how I draft my shirt pattern for male. Now for the hip level, the measurement I'm using is 39. So that is the circumference of the wearer of this pattern. So the circumference of the hip is 39. Quarter of 39 is 9.75. 9.75. So this is 9.75. Please, you have to learn how to read your measuring tape. If you know you cannot read your measuring tape properly, you don't know what the small lines on your measuring tapes means, how they work, so you don't know it, it is necessary for you to learn it. I have a video on that. Watch and it will be very helpful. You don't know how to convert the fraction value to decimal. You don't need to round up your measurement to the nearest value. Doing that will add excess to your shirt and it will not look nice at all, because whatever you add as extra to the real measurement will be multiplied by 4, because it is a measurement taking a circumference. So you don't need to do that. You need to learn how to read your measurements. You need to learn how to read the small lines. You need to learn how to divide your values, how to convert fraction to decimal, how to convert decimal to fraction. It's very easy. The link to the video will be in the description box. So watch the video and you will find it very helpful. So for this is 9.75. So this is the point. And I will not make use of this point because the fabric is 100% cotton. Male fabric is 100% cotton, you know that. And normally when you are drafting for female and you are making use of 100% cotton material, when you insert the hip measurement, you need an ease of 0.5 is okay for female. But in the case of male, I will not use 0.5, I will use 1 inch because I want it to be free and fitted at the same time. So from this 9.75, which is a quarter of the hip, I will add extra 1 inch to that. So this is 1 inch and I will cross this out. Anytime you see me crossing out like this, it means I'm not using that point. I'm not making use of the point. I've crossed it out. So this is what I'm using. So I will come to the waist level. Then measure whatever I have here from the center front. I will measure the total value I have. So this is 10.75. 10.75. So I will insert that 10.75 on the waist line. 10.5, 10.75. So instead of me to now connect the 2 points together, if I'm connecting the 2 points together, I will have a straight line. So which means the side will be straight, and the side of main is not completely straight, though not much curvy, but at the same time not straight. And because this is a fitted shirt, so I want to shape the sides and make it look nice and stay well on the body. So that is why I will be taking away from this measurement. And what I will do is the 1 inch is I added to the hip level, I will subtract it from here. So which means I'm inserting the exact hip measurement on the waist. Hope you get that. So this is from the center front to this point is the exact hip measurement, and I added 1 inch as is, which means what I have for the hip is 9.75. That is what I'm inserting on the waist level, and I will cross this out. I'm not using it. Now what I have here is 9.75. Now imagine 32 inches is the waist circumference. So if I'm using this waist measurement, quarter of it is 8. Then I will add is of 1, that is 9. You understand? If I insert the 9, it will not get up to that measurement. Can you see? So I have extra 0.75. So that is 0.75 in 4 places. So that will serve as the extra ease for the stomach area. So the stomach will have space to breathe. You understand? So that is why I don't use the waist measurement. So the next step is to connect all these points together. So the connection will be from the chest to the waist. You understand? From the chest to the waist, from the waist to the hip, and we are stopping on the hip. So whatever we have left from the hip to the shirt length is going to serve as vent. So the vent on the two sides of male shirts. So the vent will allow free movement for the wearer. So let's connect from here to here, from the armhole to the waist, then from the waist to the hip. So in connecting the chest and the waist level together, I will be making use of the very form curve ruler. I will not use a straight ruler. So this is a straight ruler. I'm not using a straight ruler because I don't want the side to straight. I want it to be a little bit curvy, not much curvy, but just a little. So I'm using the upper part of the ruler. It looks like a straight line, but it is not straight. You understand? But if it is for female, I can make it as curvy as possible. But because it is a male shirt, so not too curvy, just a slight curve. So that is what I'm trying to achieve. And after positioning my ruler the way I want it, I will take note of the number I used. So I think I have 53. If you know you can forget, you can just pencil it down. You understand? Just write it somewhere. So this is 53. Then I will connect. Look at the positioning of the ruler. So I call this the back of the ruler. So the back is facing towards the center front, while the front is facing towards the side. So it is necessary you learn how to use your rulers as well. You learn how to use them, not just having them. You have them and learn how to use them. If you don't use them correctly, you will not get the desired result. So after that, I'm connecting from the waist to the hip. So connection from waist to hip as well. You know, for female, I will use the hip curve ruler. But because it's a male shirt, I don't want the hip area to be too curvy. The curve they have is not much. So I will not use this ruler. I will use the pant curve. I will use the pant curve. And the connection and the positioning of the ruler is going to be in an opposite direction for the previous one. So the back is facing towards the side, not towards the center front. You understand? Which means the curve area is coming out, it's not going in. If you position it this way, you have taken part of the measurement away. You've subtracted from the measurement. So you bring it out. The curve is coming towards the side. So this is the side and this is the center. You understand? This is the center, this is the side. So the connection, you know, I told you I don't want it too curvy, but just stylish curve that way. And I will take note of the number I used. So I've taken note of the number. That's 42.5 on the hip level. Then can you see that? You can see the shape. So I'll come to the shirt length and work on the vent area. So whatever I have here, I will just bring it down. So if you know you cannot get a straight line, you can take the measurement from here to here, insert it on this point, then connect it straight. But with the help of your ruler, you have straight lines on your ruler. Just position the ruler on the straight line you have on the shirt length. Make sure the two lines are aligned. Once the two lines are aligned, that means you are having a straight line. You understand? So I'm positioning it that way, then bring it down. A straight line. But in a case where you want your vein to be very wide, there are some whereby you see the vein. After finishing the vein, it will be wide, not 1 inch, not 0.5. You get. So you can add extra inches to it. That is when you are adding your allowance. If you notice from the beginning of this pattern to the end, I did not add any seam allowance. Seam allowance is different from ease allowance. So the seam allowance is the extra we use in joining the pieces together. So we don't add seam allowance on pattern. And if you are going to add it on your pattern, you have to duplicate this pattern first. So that is what I will be doing. I will duplicate this pattern first and I will add my allowance to the copy I have, so that I will keep this for future purpose. And again, the M allowance, I did not bring my connection downward to the M allowance. When I'm ready to cut, I will fold it. So you will see that, you will see how I'm going to achieve that. Having said this, we are done with the front panel of a male shirt pattern. So the next thing is to confirm my armhole and my neckline measurements. Don't forget, I have my armhole circumference measurements I'm working with, and I have the neck circumference measurements I'm working with. Now I'm taking the measurement of the neckline, the front neckline. I'll measure it. So I have 4.125. Please don't add to whatever you have. If you cannot read the value on your measuring tape, watch my video on how to read a measuring tape. So this is 4.125, and don't forget this is the center front. The fabric is going to be on 4, that is multiplied by 2. So multiplied by 2 is 8.25 out of 16. So if I subtract 8.25 from 16, what I have left is 7.75. So which means I need 7.75 for the back pattern. So as I said earlier, from the beginning of this pattern to the end, I did not add any seam allowance. So all seam allowances will be added on the fabric. So when we are cutting out the fabric, that is when I will add the seam allowance. So we need seam allowance on the neckline area, we need seam allowance on the shoulder line, we need seam allowance on the armhole, and we need seam allowance by the side. So, and for the vent area, when we get to the cutting, so I will add as much as possible. That is how wide I want the vent to be. I'm ready to cut my pattern now, so I'm flipping it over. So you can see the M line is facing my side. So I will fold in the M allowance first. So I'm folding it inward. So that's the first thing I'm doing before cutting. So this is because I don't want to have a shortage when hemming the shirt. I don't want to have a shortage. So I'm folding it inward. This way, then I'll take my scissors and cut it out. I'm cutting on the line. Then I'll bring it out. And I'll continue cutting. And I'm now on the hip area. I'm cutting towards the waist level. Now, it's the waist level. So the cutting is going upward. It's going up to the chest level. Then I'm flipping it over again. The starting point is facing my side now. I'll cut the neckline. Cut the neckline. I'll cut the shoulder line. And I'll cut the armhole. So this is the front panel for the male shirt pattern.